Welcome to the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have Marie Dubuque with us because I'm like a total YouTube groupie for this person. She has the best advice. She has these short videos that will tell you everything about how to deal with nosy people or people who are getting on your nerves and how to deal with issues at work and at home with families. And she's just a modern day Ann Landers or Dear Abby. So welcome to our show, Marie.
Oh, hi, Fawn and Michelle. So excited to be here. I'm your biggest fan too. So much fun because you deal a lot with the workplace and I get a lot of questions. As we said before we started rolling, workplaces are brutal. So I might be picking your brain too.
Well, it's the personal stuff that got me drawn in. You're kind of like the old, remember Ann Landers and Dear Abby on steroids, and you've got this delivery that is just killer. So everybody listen to the podcast first and then go to her YouTube because it'll really keep you busy for a while.
I know Ann Landers. Oh my gosh. I don't think Ann Landers and Dear Abby. I grew up with that.
I know, but
you're a person after my heart. When I say that, nobody knows who I'm talking about anymore.
That's what got me to read the paper when I was a kid. I wanted to go to the lifestyle section and read the advice. It was fantastic.
Well, on the after show, I'll tell you my Dear Abby story because Dear Abby and I were friends. But okay.
No, what? Oh my God. Okay.
Wait a minute. No, hang on. Let's get it together. First things first. How in the heck did you wind up doing this?
Early days. You were started YouTube early.
Yeah, 2009. I think it was. Yeah. And my son, he just said to me, I didn't know what it was. And my son said, if you have something interesting to say, you should say it on YouTube. Because I was constantly giving him unwarranted advice. And so he said, just talk on YouTube. And so I did. And never stopped. And then I got my life coaching certification, and just my channel just grew at a time when it was just the beginning, or at least for me. I know there were a lot of seasoned YouTubers out there, but I mean, it was the heyday back then. Now it's all TikTok. Please don't leave YouTube for TikTok.
Look, I'm never leaving you, but what was the first one you did?
Oh, I think it was how to ask a girl to homecoming dance or something crazy.
Mom advice. Some mom advice.
Yes, I sort of followed my son because he's now in his mid-20s and he was in middle school then, I think, or early high school anyway. So he would talk to me about some of what he was dealing with, and then I would talk about that, and then other people would ask questions. And so I think my YouTube audience has sort of grown up. They're now a lot of them are, well, they're all ages, but I have a big percentage in their mid-20s, early 30s. And they say, yeah, I grew up with you. I started watching you in middle school. And I'm like, oh no, that's a long time ago.
So you just started giving advice, and were you that person that was always the go-to whenever someone had a life challenge? Is that how it started?
Yeah, I think it's mainly listening, because I do believe that people, they want advice, but they can figure it out on their own. They just need someone to give the common sense version, and then they figure it out and they're like, oh yeah, I should have thought of that. Mm-hmm. So just someone to reason with them, that's all.
So tell me what your number one topic is that you've had.
I think being ghosted by friends. And I did not know what that word even meant. When someone asked me that in the comments section, I'm like, and I had to look it up. So it's just being blown off by friends, and it's hurtful. More so even than I think than a romantic relationship gone south, because you rely on your friends. They stick with you, all the boyfriends or girlfriends people have had, their friends are supposed to stick with them through that. And a lot of times they don't, and friendships change and people aren't ready for it.
I have to admit, that's what led me to you in the first place, was that. And I had a friend during COVID that got squirrely and vanished, and that hurts. And the thing about that is we never publicly talk about that, because when it happens, you feel like, oh, what did I do wrong? It's going to reflect poorly on me. But that's one where you gave a home to that and some really good advice. So what did you tell everybody?
Well, you're right. And it's not you. Usually it's just, well, maybe you said during COVID, it could be that they just were more comfortable with a different group of people. That's a lot of it. I think it's your group. And if you don't fall in that group, then they're just gonna, I don't know so much as ghost you immediately, but you're gonna be a back burner. You'll be on the back burner of their life, because people gravitate, I think, towards those they have a connection with. For instance, if you just got married, you kind of drop your single friends, that happens. Or if you're a stay-at-home mom and everyone else goes to work, or you never have kids and then you don't hang out with people that do, and that sort of thing. So I think people feel more comfortable with people who are in their same stage in life, in their same group, their same situation. Although, I try to stay close with people who are not anything like me, not in my stage of life, because I feel like, let's not get bogged down with people who are just like us.
Right.
Let's reach out and branch out. Don't you think?
How do you go about doing that?
Make an effort to get out there in the community. I mean, I'm trying to help my son with that, because he moved down here with us because he has a remote job. And so I'm saying, you got to go play kickball. And because there's all these, kids his age playing kickball, or people my age and playing, what is that, pickleball?
Oh, yeah. Aren't you too young for the
Do you
pickleball
play
debate?
pickleball? You're younger than I am.
I don't think so.
But
let's
like,
not go there.
you just got to get out there and try different things, because I can't imagine myself playing pickleball. But yet, why not? Why not try just to get out there and meet people? I think it's important to just basically get out of your comfort zone. Maybe join a nonprofit. I think that's a great way to meet people too. And say, like these, I think that the biggest group that's isolated are the young singles. And, they have those apps are tough. I get a lot of questions about those too. And I think it's almost impossible to meet people on the apps. I think, oh yeah, people say, yeah, I met someone. I think it's more often not, because I see people in these coffee shops and they look at each other like, dumbfounded, like a deer in the headlights, just completely awkward, because they have nothing to relate to. If you you meet someone through kickball or pickleball, you slowly get to know them. That's much more natural than being thrown into a situation at a bar, at a coffee shop, where you're just staring at somebody and you know what to say.
Don't knock it. I've done that.
It's so
But-
true, because I have my oldest is 21 and he's at home living with me, and a little bit like your son, it's not where he went to high school, it's a different place. And he's like, I've got to meet friends, but because of COVID, it's such a challenge. Where do you go? And the app thing, exactly like you said, is not connecting him with the relationships you want. But it just seems like these kids don't have that same how to have these social interactions. It's like we've left this part off of raising them today. So getting them out there to become more comfortable in social skills. Do you think it's the nonprofits, like you said, or is there anything else you can think of, just advice for those of us who have these kids at home, or young adults?
Yeah, it's so hard. Like you said, you would think with all the technology that they would be out there socializing. It's the opposite. They're more isolated than ever. And it's hard. I know it's hard to put yourself out there into new groups. But I always say, do what you love. Like I told my son, you got to go play beach volleyball, when the pandemic's over. Go play. He's like, I don't like volleyball and I don't want to do something just to meet people that I don't like doing. And he's like, he's right. You want to do something that you're passionate about, that you like. So it's not just to meet people. It's to do what you love, whether it's a nonprofit, maybe a political group, the young Democrats, young Republicans, or old Democrats, old Republicans. I don't know, just where you feel comfortable. And by doing what you love, you meet people that way. It could be a softball league through work, but that's another problem with work.
Yeah, and with work, that's where I want to move it, because most of our listeners are going to be female and on a leadership track. And the one thing is that as we're in business, it gets so intense, but we're still personal human beings with feelings. And sometimes you get in an environment where, okay, you have to deal with confrontation. So do you have advice for confrontation?
I get that all the time. Avoid. No, that I want to hear from you, Fawn, what you think. But I mean, if you battle it out with someone and you get defensive and then you get antagonistic, that doesn't end well. I really think so. I always say, nod and smile, and maybe take a moment and regroup and excuse yourself, and then try to figure out how to diplomatically get through this. And this is how I've handled work situations. Say, okay. And then if this is not my boss, this is just someone trying to tell me what to do. Okay. And then I go do it the way I'm supposed to do it.
Well, that's
what do you think about that? I don't know if that's what I don't know if that, what you think. What do you think about that?
I think that a lot of times we don't want to confront because we're afraid that it's going to get twisted, distorted, and thrown back at us. So I say that if you can't do it directly, which, the higher you get into leadership, the more you have to do it. There's not an option. I say you just say, I know what you did. And they'll be like, what? Huh? I mean, oh no, I know what you did. And if you really want to get them, you say, and I know more about what you did than you think I know, and it needs to stop. Because then they have to fill in the blanks because they know what they did. And then,
oh, wow. That's a great answer.
What do you think, Michelle?
I probably would coach a little differently. I'd probably go into what I call kind of a back brief skill, where you repeat back what to ensure understanding. Is this what you meant? Because a lot of times whenever you say something back that just seems a bit outlandish, just hearing it from someone else's point of view causes them to pause and go, okay, no, wait a second. Because in my mind, you're trying to get back to this neutral ground where you've got commonality so that you can move forward. So I may do here, let me say this back to you, see if I understand it correctly. And a lot of times that's where you start to, you uncover the disconnect so that you can move forward from a place of, again, mutual respect and understanding to find a good solution.
Well, both of those are great, because I get a lot of questions how to deal with nasty coworkers.
Okay, how do you deal with
Well, that's the question. And I always say, keep the conversation superficial. Don't talk about anything personal. Don't trust anyone, and always be polite. And even if, and hold your head high. Because again, you don't want to be known as the rabble rouser, the one who's causing problems. You just want to smooth things over, keep your head down, and move on. What do you guys think about that?
I like that. Okay, now what about when people are spreading gossip?
Oh, I know.
And telling
and this happens a lot in social settings, in high school groups, and they don't stop doing that. Don't you? It's awful. And again, hold your head high. And I truly believe your friends, the people who know you, will believe you. And the person who's spreading the gossip, their true colors will come out. So you can sit there and badmouth that person, but then you're stooping to their level. So I say, let your friends, the people who you really care about, let them see the real you, and let the gossiper dig their own grave. I mean, would you say that's true in the workplace, or what can you do about workplace gossip? What do you guys think?
Oh, I think it's a little bit of the same. Michelle, you've worked in much more intense work environments than I have. What do you think?
I think it just depends on the severity of the gossip, right? Because in the event that it's something kind of superficial, something new will come along quickly. And so 100% great advice. Just the more you can not call attention and just let it go and let your actions speak louder, I think it's great. I think if it becomes something that's much more impactful to maybe your career, your reputation, then I'd probably get a more aggressive tactic of trying to understand what's going on and bring some facts. I mean, at the end of the day, people a lot of times will respond to facts. And who are the people that matter most in regards to how it's going to affect you? So is it rumor that's getting to your boss? Is it gossip that's getting to, a junior employee? Like, it just depends on the scenario, but I think you would just be more direct.
Right, right. And I don't want to tell people necessarily go to HR because everybody's HR is different. And what do you guys think about that? About going, should I ever tell anyone go to HR? Because I've heard HR can be great and HR can be terrible depending on the company, and they could make it worse or they could make it better. I'm refrained from ever saying that because I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you don't go to HR. It's just
Ever. Okay. Okay. Right.
Oh,
Isn't that what you're supposed to do though? Isn't that what they're there for?
So there's a couple of things. A lot of larger companies now, they have access to where it's confidential, where you can go and report something around it if it's like an ethical issue. So those are healthy. Now, to the point, the HR departments are going to be a reflection of the company culture. So have I gone to HR for something that was completely unacceptable and had the HR person look me in the eye and say, "You sure you want to report that?" Yes, I've had that happen. Have I had the manager that just been very open about an issue or something that was inappropriate, and they take that role very seriously and work for a very healthy company culture, that action's taken there and there was no fear of repercussion or something negative coming back. So I would love to sit here and say, yes, if it's something that is ethical or inappropriate, go to HR. But I also have been a victim of the HR department that wasn't healthy. So I think you have to make a good decision yourself based on the situation.
Right, right. And I've gotten questions, and that's why I saved it to ask you guys. What do you do? A young lady asked me what she's been rejected at work. They told her at work her contract is not going to be renewed, and she's just devastated. And so that's not my expertise. So I wanted to ask you, and before I get back to her, do you guys just think, how would you handle that at work? Just kind of move on and
tell her to buy my book, Coming Back.
Yes.
Michelle, don't you think that everybody at some time gets a kick in the gut at work? You either work for a jerk or you work in an environment where they're not appreciative of you, and you just have to find a better fit. And, I never was fired, but almost everybody I know has been. And it is either something that defines you with greatness because you rebound even stronger, or something that makes you stall out and find out that you're a weak person. So you just pick up and, get yourself together and move on, because better days are coming. They don't deserve you.
And sometimes the why is irrelevant, has nothing to do with you in a situation, just to build on what Fawn's saying, right? It can be they didn't have budget. It was for a short amount of time. The project was over. While you could be the greatest team member for the time you were there, it just may not be something they can carry forward. So being able to look in the mirror and recognize, is there something I could do differently or better? Sure. Is this something in my control or outside of my control? It's not always about you.
Oh, great points. You're
What
right.
about dealing with people who take credit for what you've done?
My gosh. I know. And doesn't that happen all the time? Oh,
Whether it's at work or at the PTA or whatever. So
I know. And that is so hard. And I want to hear from you too about that, because that happens, I think, more at work. But I mean, and I've been in these moms groups at schools where someone's doing everything and then other people are taking credit for whatever it is. I don't know. volunteer work at some kind of an event. And, I just say, I wouldn't, it almost makes you look petty if you say, well, I did this. I mean, I need attention too. But yet you don't want these people, these drama queens and kings, to sit there and get all the glory either. But again, I think that these people, their true colors come out, and you'll see they're being lazy, but they're taking credit for everybody else's work, and they're delegating, but never doing anything. So I would hold your head high, as I always say. Just do your work, let the chips fall where they may, and don't fall into that game where, she just takes credit for everything. She does nothing, because then what are you doing? You're stooping to their level.
Michelle,
what do you guys think?
I'll let Michelle get strong thoughts on this.
Yeah, on this one, I say at the end of the day, the team wins, your boss wins, you win, and you're playing the long game. And
Right.
And I think there's other ways to bring attention to the work that you've contributed with, or even highlight people around you who are doing great work. And the more you are prone to acknowledge and appreciate and celebrate them, you find that the good stuff comes back.
I love that. So then you point out who is doing the work instead of bad mouthing the person who's taking the credit. You say, "Oh, yeah, Susie over there. Look what Susie's doing. She's decorating this, and that. Wow, I want to be like her or something," right?
Well, Harry Truman said there's no limit to what you can accomplish if you're willing to give up the credit. And I think that has always been very inspiring to me. But at the same time, if you are in a corporate career, really in any work situation, they have to know what you're doing. It's not enough to give the team the credit, because if you don't take credit for what you're doing, someone else will take credit for you. And that was a really enlightening interview I did several years ago with Kathy Hannon, who was a managing partner at KPMG. And she had to do her self-evaluation. And, when it came for her time to say everything she had done, her boss then said, "Well, why didn't you mention this, or this?" And she didn't say what she had done because she didn't want to brag. And he said, "Because you should know that this guy down the hall has just taken credit for all of it because he knew you wouldn't." And she got out of there and she gave that guy the what for, but it was a really valuable lesson. And so I think there have to be ways that we communicate exactly what we are accomplishing so that we do get the credit.
Yeah.
And you do that just in really casual email conversation. Want to update you what's going on here. I'm really proud our team has done this, really glad to be a part of this, but they need to know what you're working on.
I got a great tactic to that,
But
particularly for women. So, speaking of performance reviews, write them in the third person. Write your own review in third person as if you were writing it for one of your employees. And you will remove that feeling of, oh, I can't brag or I'm saying too much. It will be so much easier for you to speak to your performance. Every year when I turn in my performance review, it is in third person.
really,
That's a
Yes.
great idea.
well, one thing I've noticed again and again in the interviews I do is they say that the biggest mistake women do at work is that they count on others to recognize and reward their performance. And everybody else is too busy worried about what they're doing with themselves. So they're not looking to see how you're achieving. You have to make it really clear what you're doing.
Right.
Marie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's a new wow. Okay. I'm going to remember. I'm going to write all this down.
It's very powerful. It is a very powerful strategy.
Yeah. And you're right. We just kind of want to kind of melt into the woodwork. And yet we need to shout from the rooftops, "Hey, I did this. And yeah, because you be proud of what you've accomplished.
100%.
Yeah.
So with topics of women's, what are some of the biggest things you've had women writing you about and that you've taken on?
Family members.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Just sisters-in-laws, mothers-in-laws, cousins. Just, I think family members can be the most brutal because they can bring you down and they feel like they have license to. What are you going to do? Leave your family? Oh, yeah, in some cases, not so much leave them, but distance yourself. If you have a distant cousin and you go to Thanksgiving dinner after the pandemic and they constantly push your buttons and they just know what to say and you walk away feeling horrible, you've got to get away from them. Nod and smile and leave, nod and smile and leave, and say as little as possible. I mean, yes, you could come up with something witty when they give you some backhanded compliment, but you've really got to stay away because these people, I think it's just jealousy, basic jealousy. They are jealous of your life, your looks, your success, whatever it is. So they're trying to bring you down to elevate themselves, and you have to stay away.
Well, and then you take that another degree to what has happened really in the last 5 years with family relationships and politics. And this isn't just distant cousins. This is immediate family that disagree politically and can't stand to be in the same room and
I know.
are divorcing members of their family because of something stupid that they saw on television or something that may or may not be true. So how do you advise people about that?
Well, agree to disagree. I mean, it's so divisive now. And I know your blood boils. I get it. But you have to respect other people's opinions. As long as they're not treating you badly, allow them to express their feelings and don't take it personally. I mean, if they start attacking you, that's one thing. But I think they should be allowed to express their feelings and you not just boil over. But by the same token, I wouldn't go to family gatherings talking about politics when you know Uncle Joe over there is going to be fuming. I don't know. What do you guys, what's your take on it? Because it's so upsetting now. What's going on?
Really is. Michelle, you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just avoid that conversation. Like because when I say avoiding, because typically it's not a conversation of discovery and understanding. It is I'm going to argue my side. And if you don't agree with me, then I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. So for me, I don't need to play defense with those conversations. I'm getting nothing out of it. Now, if somebody wants to have a different view and wants to actually have a great conversation around, tell me a little bit more and help me understand and let's share and figure out, how do we both move forward, then I will have that conversation all day. But I'm not interested in playing defense on my own values and beliefs.
What happens if it turns to something that's so morally reprehensible that you feel like you're complicit if you don't? An example would be somebody says something very racist.
Well, in those situations, I'm like, that is absolutely offensive and I'm not comfortable with that. And if it gets into a, debate, well, then I have the choice of removing myself from that situation altogether. So I'm not going to win that. That's a battle that I'm not going to win with that person in that moment.
Right. Amen. Exactly. I feel the same way. Just remove yourself. Right.
It's like there's so many damaged relationships because of what's going on. And I had a more distant family relative that I loved. And we got into a racial conversation. And it was, and I made my feelings clear and I tried to end it. And I kept trying to change the subject. It didn't go well. And so I thought to myself, this is somebody that I love. And I don't want this person to not be in my life. So I thought, I'm going to send a gift. And I sent a Tibetan singing bowl as a New Year's gift. And this individual was so offended. And I'm trying to make up, right? I'm like trying to say, let's get beyond that. And she was so offended because she said I sent it because I meant she needed to meditate.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there are a lot of times people are not at their best. What about advice on forgiveness? How do you forgive? And how do you speed that process? Because I've learned over time, you may want to forgive, and I want to as soon as possible because it's the better thing for your life, but you have to work through things. How do you accelerate that process?
I agree. And I truly believe you have to talk about what went wrong because I get a lot of questions about that. I've reconnected with a friend yeah, and we ended our friendship 10 years ago on really bad terms. Do I talk about it or we just move on? And I feel like if you can't move on without talking about it, you need to. If it's still going to bother you and it's the reason that you ended the friendship, it's not going, that problem's not going away. And it's not like you have to rehash and rehash and rehash, but I feel like you have to address it. And even if you still can't come to terms, at least acknowledge what happened and then move on. And maybe you won't get a resolution. And then you can decide, well, okay, I think I can move on from this now, or maybe I can't, and maybe I can't be friends again. It's like getting together with an ex. Oh, yeah, that's why we got divorced. That's why we can't reconnect again. There's always a reason. And it's whether you can get past it, and you need to hear what they have to say about it. And so, some people won't ever admit they're wrong, ever.
What is that?
I know. It's their pride. You can't change them.
I had a college professor tell me the best thing you can do is to learn how to apologize quickly and just admit you're wrong, because people want to help you when you do it.
Right.
And they appreciate that. Michelle, do you have thoughts on this?
I think you usually just have to say, I'm sorry, because it takes the stress off of me. I mean, I had a very, very close friend. We had lived together. She was a dear friend through childhood. After we lived together, we went like a year where we didn't speak. And during that time, some very difficult life challenges happened. Well, I had to look at how I behaved in that relationship and reached out to her. And I just said, I'm sorry. I wasn't the friend you needed.
Wow.
I'd love to move on. And thankfully, I mean, that's one of my dearest friends today, but I could have sat there and I could have given excuses and I could have pushed blame. But, I mean, look, I made good and bad choices and I needed to own those, and it weighed on me. And so I could never have gone on carrying that burden. And so it was very healing. Even if she would have said no, I still needed to say, I'm sorry.
Right. Oh, yeah. And it's the most self-confident people and the most together people who are willing to admit when they were wrong and willing to say, I'm sorry. And it's the people who are really insecure, I think, who have trouble with it. Just my take.
I think that's so true. But so here's where I get tripped up, because I'm so willing to look at it and say, yeah, I messed up here. But when someone else clearly messes up and won't and becomes a jerk because of it, what do you do then?
I've had that happen. I've run into a lot of people, had a lot of people on YouTube that's happened. And sometimes you just have to cut off the friendship, or at least turn the friendship into an acquaintance type relationship. Because then you ask, well, okay, is this someone who has my back? No, not really. Never.
That I've never heard that worded like that. That's interesting. Just make a conscious decision to turn a friendship into an acquaintance.
Yeah. So that it's not like you block them completely, but that's the type of person who you run into. You'll see them in a group situation. Maybe they're friends with your friends, but you're not going to tell them your deepest, darkest secrets, and you're not going to have long conversations with them. Yet you're polite and nice when you do see them, and it's a lot less awkward, I think.
That's good.
It's a little bit of what you shared earlier, almost like you have those seasons where, based on where you are in your life, this relationship makes sense to be very close, or it needs to be maybe a little bit more separated, and not necessarily good or bad. It's just where it is right now. And it may change later.
Right. And you could be friends later on. Maybe you're really busy with your career and your friend is a stay-at-home mom and you just simply can't relate. But later on, when she or he is an empty nester and you're realizing I was just way too focused on my career and now I want to enjoy life, maybe you'll reconnect again.
Well, what has a friend done that has hurt you the most?
I think, like you said, not saying they're sorry. They clearly messed up and they just didn't say they were sorry. Or more importantly, someone who takes advantage. I can't stand that. Now that I moved to Florida, I hope that our house is not like a hotel, because I won't let it be. Because when I first lived in Florida 30 years ago, someone said to me, they said, well, you're going to have friends you never knew you had, because they're going to want to come stay with you. And I remembered that, because I'm like, okay, My house is not a hotel. I'm not going to let it be. So anyway, even if that's not your case, it's people who take advantage and they know they're taking advantage. They ask you to do things because you don't say no. Oh, will you take care of my kids here or there or whatever, whatever it is. Will you run my errands? And because you don't want to say no and you want to be a people pleaser. And I've been there, we've all been there. But I think when you've really matured, you've stopped doing that.
Yeah, but Marie, as somebody who also lives in Florida, I'm telling you, you have to take charge of that, because the people who are coming to visit you, here's how you know they're coming to see you. They're willing to come in July and August. But if it's January, February, March, April, they're coming for a vacation. And that's when you say, I have so much company. I hope you don't mind. We have a 2-day limit. And
that's a great one.
Oh, I got that from my mother. I say, I have the Betty Germer rule. So we have a 2-day limit. And because there was a year where I had 10 sets of company in 8 weeks.
Oh.
And I thought, no more. No more. And then I had a list of Airbnbs and things, because really, if you're coming to see me, 2 days you're going to appreciate, or you come in the summer when I'm not getting everybody all at once.
Right.
So COVID's been really nice. I'm having my first company come this week.
And is it somebody you like, somebody you want to visit you?
Yeah, Michelle's coming.
Yes.
As long as my housekeeper shows up this week, you can come.
Well, I always say too, I've told relatives, I said, you know what, if you're even at an airport on a layover somewhere, we'll come meet you in Orlando, in Miami, wherever, we'll come meet you. So that way it's only 2 hours and you spend time with them, and then it's an excuse for a trip, and then they don't stay with you, and you just, it's quick, and you get to spend time with them. So I like that.
What do you say about how to say no to people?
You have to see, that's the thing. I've run into people, and we all know people like this, that you say no and they try to get you to change your mind. They? Oh my God. And you've got to stick to your guns, because otherwise, if you keep bowing down, you keep saying, well, okay, then they know they've got you, and they know that you will never say no. So if you say no and mean it and never change your mind. And like you said, what was it? Like the 2-day rule or something like that. You could say, well, no, I can't right now, or that's impossible. Right now I'm just swamped. And whatever you're swamped doing, you could be swamped organizing your sock drawer, whatever it is. I'm just completely crazy busy right now. And whatever that it means to you, just be vague about whatever it is, so you're not lying, and say no.
Yeah, my brother told me once, he said, oh, that won't be possible. What's the other person going to say? It's like, they're not going to say, well, why? They're just
right.
Michelle, are you good at saying no?
It depends. I'm a bit of that people pleaser. I've gotten better, but I think it's those good Southern roots where I was taught that, you're always the hostess and welcoming everybody. And then, something changed, and I decided I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I was curious, Marie, if you had a period in your life where you were always saying yes, and then you finally had this moment where you went, enough's enough. Like, what was that moment for you?
In my early 30s, I mean, I wanted desperately to make mom friends, because I wanted to have play groups. I thought that'd be really good for my son when he was little. I ended up taking people's kids everywhere. Finally, I said, I'm not a chauffeur. I'm not someone's babysitter. This isn't what I wanted. And they will take advantage of you, especially if you work from home. They think you don't really work.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, oh, yeah, so you have time. You can run little Johnny here, there, and everywhere. I'm going off to the spa or whatever. And I'm like, I finally just said, forget it. No. And I never did it again. It's just, you get to the point, I think if you feel so taken advantage of, you get to the point where you're not going to do it for anybody.
Well, I've noticed that as an issue, not only with people in situations like that, but with people who do not have children and in their families. And this, I don't have kids, but this was certainly not the case in my family. But I've seen this in larger families. and this one has kids, this one has kids, this one has kids. But since you're single, you can take care of dad doing this. Oh, since you don't have children, you can do that. And it just all gets dumped on them.
Right. And I've seen that in the workplace where because the single people or people without kids, they don't get the holidays off.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? So that's not right. I know.
Their life is just as important, and their
Yeah.
plans
Yep.
are just as important. And it's one of those things where I think people take advantage of recognizing where all the bias shows up, kind of that unconscious bias shows up in the workplace, so they can recognize it and know when to pull it off and shift gears a bit. Well, you have shared such great advice. I know there were a couple of key things that really stood out to me as I think about our listeners on some things that they could learn. First of all, check out the YouTube channel, because it's fantastic, and it just warms your heart in the way that Marie delivers her advice, because she tackles the real stuff, the things that everybody is dealing with, and maybe they're too embarrassed to ask. So it's wonderful, and thank you for doing that.
Oh,
But
thank you. I love it. You guys are doing the
it's
same.
obvious. It's obvious. But you talk a lot about, just frankly, people really have the answers. Your job is just to be a very good listener, whether they're tuning into your YouTube channel. But what does it take to build strong relationships? That's the underlying core component. And also just good advice around, especially now as everybody's stuck inside and they're missing out on those relationships, just to be willing to step out of your comfort zone and try new things. So look locally to figure out, what is it that I can do to build more connections with people. I kind of also stood out as just relationships go in cycles, whether you're talking about relationships at work, family, friends, and kind of recognize those and honor those for what they are. Sometimes it's just okay to put it down and walk away. But it all boiled down to, you owe it to yourself to build healthy boundaries.
Exactly.
And recognizing what it is you need and being able to articulate that clearly to those around you, so they can understand what's important to you, and then honor and respect you and those needs, and own that, because it's your life and you want it to be full of joy and happy. So thank you so much, Marie. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
This went so fast. Thank you, guys.
Oh, we love you. Hey, Marie, everybody go to her YouTube channel. How many people go there or have been there?
I think I have 80-some thousand subscribers, and I don't know. I've had millions of views over the year. Yeah. After you do it for a long time, people end up just showing up.
Well, thank you so much, Marie. It's wonderful.
Great talking to you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Von Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.